How many guitars do you have right now?
Oh no, how many guitars? Not a lot of guitars. I mean, like everyone think, oh, he's a guitar player. He has lots of guitars. But I have, let's see, 7 guitars,
Seven guitars.
one bass guitar, and 4 acoustic guitars.
This question is for the younger musicians.
What's my advice to kids is do as much 10-hour days as you can now. No, don't do 10-hour days, because then when you get carpal tunnel syndrome, you'll come and blame me. So don't do 10-hour days.
Hey guys, welcome to Art and Culture Tribe. Hope you're doing well. Today we have an amazing guitarist, one of my favorite from the independent scene. He's been part of many bands, to name a few: Bhumi, Thermal and a Quarter, and Peepal Tree. You want to know who that is? Let's check him out. So let's welcome Tony Das.
Hi everyone.
Hi Tony, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. Hi Dinkar. Thanks for having me.
I'm so honored to have you here. Big fan.
That feels funny to hear you say that because we've been friends for such a long time.
So, Tony, let's start with how you got into music. I mean, was guitar your first instrument, or is there any secret there?
Oh gosh, that's a kind of a long story. I think we're going to take up the whole podcast.
That's fine.
But so I got into music when I was a kid, as in we were very much into music. My siblings and myself, my parents also. They were quite a big influence in kind of sharing their love for music with us. But again, not in a very what do you say? Not in a very elitist kind of way or anything. They loved all sorts of things, but they just kind of shared their love for music for us. And we grew up in Dubai, and so there was one radio station, local radio station, that used to play all sorts of things. A lot of the time, during peak listening times, it was the top 40 music from the US and the UK mostly. But at all other times, they would, try and fit in as many things as they can. There was a time of the day when they would play an hour of classical music, Western classical music. And then there was another hour when they would play new age music, and they do retro music, all sorts of things. So I think that was one of the first steps in broadening my musical horizons a little bit. We listened to so many kinds of things, from pop to metal to everything in between and outside of those styles. So that's how we really kind of got interested. And then we used to like singing along to, stuff that would come on the radio. And then at some point, my big sister took it upon herself to get us to learn songs and sing them, just at home and sing them together. And, not really in harmony or anything, because nobody really knew anything about that. Nobody was really educated that way. But just kind of sing them together, or, each one of us take a different verse of a song and, things like that. So that's really when we got into it. And those were kind of my beginnings.
How old were you back then?
Oh gosh, I can't remember. I mean, it could have been as early as 5 or 6, but in a slightly more organized way. With, like I said, with my sister taking charge of things, probably when I was around 8 or 9 onwards.
Okay. Yeah. Did you have a guitar teacher, or you just learned it at home or something like that?
So again, following that, at some point, my dad saw how, interested we were in it, but that, we didn't really, there was no internet or anything back then. So we didn't really have the opportunity to take it further just by sitting around at home and singing songs from the radio. So he kind of suggested, why not go for some music classes in the summer holidays? And that was met with lots of resistance from us, because like my brother and I, we were heavily into like computer animation and things like that. Okay. And so we'd spend all our time on the computer doing all these things. So we were less than keen. But he was like, shut up and go. He didn't, not that roughly, but he's like, no, you guys have to go. So then we went to our first class at, I think it was called Dubai Music School. Our teachers were Miles and Giles Perry, brothers of a musician who was quite famous at that time, and even now, a guy called Glenn Perry,
Okay.
multi-instrumentalists. And Miles and Giles they were great. They were so like calm in their demeanor, and they were so encouraging of all sorts of things. So, you pick up the guitar and, you play, if you play the right open strings, you're playing Nothing Else Matters, right?
Yeah.
And so he was like, hey, check this out. And we were like, wow, that is like the coolest thing we've ever seen. It's like, no effort. So that really got us hooked right away. And, then he started classes, and he always made sure to kind of throw in something that we might know to make it interesting and keep us hooked, because that's really important when you're a kid and you're trying to get into something. You need something to kind of draw you in further. And I think the kind of experience that they had teaching, I think they knew that. So we were kind of hooked from then. But at the same time, it was still an auxiliary kind of thing to accompany us when we were singing. So it was always, we learned 3 or 4 or 5 chords, and we'd play those same chords for all of the, which you can, as the Axis of Awesome has shown us, 4 chords and like a million songs. And so that was pretty much it for the longest time. Once in a while, we'd learn a new chord or something, but we were not aware of, again, the rigor that it took, because we only went for a few classes during the summer holidays. So, yeah, we weren't aware of the kind of discipline involved to get to somewhere you had to get. And we were not really aware of what that point was that you had to get to also. So we kept on that way for quite some time. Then I left Dubai, I came to Bangalore, and kept on that way for some time. Again, singing was kind of the primary thing. And then at some point, we went to the National Law School for Strawberry Fields, which was, a big festival back then. And this was at the end of 1998.
Okay.
And I saw, and till then, somewhere later, somewhere in the middle of this journey, again, I used to play a little bit. I used to play a little bit in church, used to play a little bit in college. We were on the college acoustic team. At some point along the way, I kind of developed the idea that if I play my chords, I learned a few more chords. I thought if I play my chords for 20 years, I'll be able to play like Slash or something. I had no idea of anything else that was involved. And then I went to National Law School, and I saw all these bands. I saw Thermal was one of the bands who was there that year. There's a band called Every Mother's Nightmare from Delhi, which was a mixture of Nightmare on Elm Street and Orange Street and Every Mother's Nightmare were called Nightmare on Elm Street. Half the band came together just to put up a show at this place. Then I think there was Juice from Chennai. There was I think there was Molotov Cocktail. I'm not sure if Naveen. I think I saw Naveen play there.
Okay.
Naveen Damas. But yeah, I went there and I saw all these bands, and they were playing like music by Megadeth. They were playing Red Hot Chili Peppers. They were playing whatever you can think of. They were playing a whole bunch of originals. And I was there so deflated. I was like, oh gosh, these guys are, barely like 3-4 years older than I am. And they're just, shredding the frets off of their guitars. And so I went home really like demotivated, but motivated also. And then I went out and I bought a Joe Satriani Flying in a Blue Dream album.
Okay.
And I bought a compilation album of Extreme. It was called compilation. No, it was called An Accidental Collocation of Atoms. It was a strange name. It was just a compilation album.
Okay.
So I went out and I started listening to those albums and started trying to work out stuff, get guitar, instrumental music, and guitar in the context of songs. Vocal songs. And then, the internet had come into India by then, and there were lots of these cyber cafes. So I would go down to the local one every once in a while whenever I had some pocket money. And I would download text files of like scales and things like that. And so I was learning this, I was practicing ear training, not knowing that it was even called ear training. I was transcribing all these songs, and I was learning kind of theory side by side. And that's when I really started. That's when I consider myself having started learning guitar, not just knowing how to play some chords. I mean, which is great because for all those years you were learning how to develop a steady rhythm, learning to sing while playing and stuff. So it's it all counts. But that's when my serious guitar studies started happening, and then I flunked second PUC because I was doing too much guitar. But that was I don't want to influence the youngsters here wrongly. So take this with a pinch of salt. That was a great year for me because I got to practice lots of guitar. But stay in school, kids. Study well. So that year was great. And then shortly after that, I started. Oh, wait a minute. When is the story stopping? This was how did I get into music, right?
Just go on. That's fine.
After like the year after that, when I was waiting to do my re-exams the next year, I met up with my friend George, who was a friend of my cousin's, and I'd met him before, and he was like the first like pro guy that I knew. Like he was playing like music by Steve Vai and stuff, and I was like, wow, who is this guy? And he was just amazing. And I played a bit for him, and he was like very encouraging. He's like, wow, you sound great and everything. And he's like, keep going and learn your scales and stuff. I was like, hey, cool. And then so the next year, after this year of not really being able to play a lot more guitar, which was still limited because my mom wasn't too happy. So anytime I'd sit and play with the guitar for longer than a set amount of time, she, what are you doing? Get out of the house. I mean, get out meaning not get out, like go get some sunshine and whatever. So I met with George again after this 1 year, and he was like, "Hey, play something for me." And then I played a Joe Satriani song for him, and he was like, "Wow, there's so much improvement from last year. That's crazy." And he's like, "Will you come and play with my band?" I was like, "Wow, really?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so by that time, I had somewhere in the middle of that time, I had met Willie DeMoss, for those of you who don't know, and we became really good friends really quick. And we both had the same kind of roots with guitar music. I mean, playing wise, we had the same kind of roots. The kind of rock stuff. Really, we were really enamored with that kind of thing. And so we jammed a little bit. And over the course of that time, we jammed as much as we could. We played a bit. We were exploring new music and trying to work out old music. And so George asked if I would join the band and if I knew somebody who played the drums also. And I was like, yeah, Willie, my best friend. And he was like, okay, cool, bring him along. And I think George, he's like the nicest, sweetest guy. And so I don't want to call it an audition, but, we went there to jam. And, everything really worked out well. I mean, everyone liked everyone else. And there was such a great bunch of people in that band. And that was really my first proper band, semi-pro to pro band experience.
What was the band called?
Oh yeah, it was called Mixed Fruit Jam.
Mixed Fruit Jam.
Yeah, so the band
came up with the name?
That was George, all George. Actually, I'm not sure if it was entirely George because the band existed before we joined as the RV Engineering College band. Okay. Right? So they would represent RV all over the place. And so there were a whole different bunch of people in the band at that time. But as usually happens, everyone was finishing, their terms at college. And they were going off either outside the country to study or they were starting to work. And, the music at the college level usually takes a back seat after that for most people. So, but George was, he did start working after that, but he was all about the band. His life was that band. So he wanted to keep it going. And so he was looking for people to join him to help keep it going. So that was Mixed Fruit Jam. And that was a good exercise in, developing a more eclectic ear also. As it is, I had already had that background. But now when it came to playing, it was a good exercise in not being, snobby and elitist and saying I will only play one kind of music. Not to say that it's bad to say I will only play one kind of music, but we were young and we were still learning. And there's so much that you can learn from transcribing other music, right? All of the, I've had the good fortune of hanging out with some of, the best musicians in the world, thanks to my friend Sandeep. And all of them, like without fail, will tell you that, fine, I learned some stuff in college, I learned these chords, I learned, harmony and all that stuff. But the thing that really made me, that really taught me so much and made me grow and get better as a musician was by sitting down and working out the music of my antecedents, of, those people that came before me. And and so, there's so much that you learn. Beatles were a cover band for years before they started doing their own thing. So many people. I'm not saying it's the only way, but just before, because this is the internet, everyone's going to say, oh, he said this, blah, 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 blah. Oh, he said that, blah, blah. So I just have to put these disclaimers in every once in a while. But so that was it was a great bunch of people. It was, we had a great time. We were all kids. We didn't know what we were doing. The music scene was much more disorganized back then.
Disorganized?
Yeah. As in it, nowadays it's coming much closer to what you would call an organized industry, so to speak. The management and all those things are in place. But back then it was kind of like the Wild West, pretty much. So yeah, and we were kids and we were just playing because it was fun, and we wanted to get better and we wanted to grow, and we needed some money. But that was never at the forefront. It was always, when you're a kid, it doesn't matter so much. But yeah, so that was my first like real band situation. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's like a long journey.
Yeah, that was like half the journey.
How many guitars do you have right now?
Oh no, how many guitars? Not a lot of guitars. I mean, like everyone think, oh, he's a guitar player. He has lots of guitars. But I have, let's see, 7 guitars, one bass guitar, one bass guitar, and 4 acoustic guitars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I'm sure you know the names. So what are these?
Oh yeah. Oh, there are all sorts of things. One is my first electric guitar that I ever had. That was it actually belongs to my brother. But at some point along this whole journey, I started leaning more towards trying to work out the guitar stuff, and he became more of a singer. So my brother sings, and back in college, we used to be in a band together, and he used to sing for the band. I used to play guitar. He used to sing for one of Bangalore's earliest, I don't want to say earliest, one of Bangalore's early prog rock bands called Cryptic. Okay. Excellent band. We had Trinity D'Souza on guitar. There was Prakash Kain on bass, and the Beast Durga on the drums.
Okay.
And my brother used to sing for them. They had a couple of different lineup changes. Mrinal used to play keyboards. Mrinal Kalakrishnan, this genius guy. So he used to sing. But so my sister had gifted that guitar to him for his birthday. And at some point, I started playing more guitar. So he was like, whatever, you use it because we needed to play shows and stuff like that. So, so that was my first real electric guitar, which is technically my brother's. Then there's this Yamaha. So I said 7 guitars. They're not all like super fancy or anything like that. There's this Yamaha Pacifica that my brother gave to me when he left the country for a while in 2012. He wasn't going to take it with him, and he was just selling off stuff and all that. So I said, hey, I'll buy this. So I bought that guitar, and it was always there. It was sitting around with me next to my computer. So when we did the People Tree stuff, it was the guitar that was most handy. It was there. So I pick it up and, I'd play something. And it was the only guitar I had which had a tremolo on it.
Okay.
So some of the People Tree stuff was done and the tremolo found its way into those things. And then at that point, since it was the only guitar I had with a tremolo, when it came time for us to go live, I just started using it. And it's a great workhorse guitar. I mean, it's great for beginners. It costs, at that time, brand new, I think it cost $15,000.
Okay.
And it's, it's great build quality. It sounded great, people constantly come up to me and ask, "Hey man, what have you done with the pickups? Have you swapped out the pickups and stuff? Have you put Sir pickups or something?" And I'm like, "No man, this is like stock Pacifica pickups." They're like, "What? How does it sound like that?" I'm like, "It's a great guitar. Just try one out before you you pass judgment on it." Yeah, so that's one of the guitars. Then another guitar is an Erisa Telecaster that I had made in 2006, or rather, I commissioned it in 2006. I think it was done by 2007, and that's a beautiful guitar. Erisa is a great builder. He lives in Oroville, but it's pretty heavy.
Okay.
And yeah, in my old age, I can't do like a 3-hour show with that thing on my shoulder. Is
That
one
heavy?
thing. Yeah. Not unreasonably so. But yeah, I'd prefer to play longer shows with less on my shoulder. And secondly, also it's a Telecaster. So again, there's no trem, and I find myself leaning a little bit more on the trem nowadays. So that's why my main guitar is it's a Sir Custom Modern, which has a trem, and that's a work of art. It's a flawless guitar that I have to publicly thank Mr. S.R. Nurani for giving to me.
Oh, nice.
He just gifted. I mean, who does that? It's crazy.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so that's like my workhorse, my main guitar these days. I also have a Gibson Les Paul that again is a beautiful guitar. It's not as versatile as the Sir in the sense that every position is fat. It's this big fat sound, but nothing else sounds like it.
What is your go-to setup when you just take your guitar and start practicing or jamming, or when you're composing? Is there a different setup for each thing, or you're just like?
It depends. Nowadays, a lot of those moments are stolen moments. Like, the time that you get for composing is you're not able to have a fixed schedule per day because everything else kind of takes precedence over that a lot of the time. So it's helpful having a number of different ways of going about it. Like, if all my stuff, if we've just come back from a tour or something and all my stuff is packed away, instead of having to take out my pedal board and hook it up and go through all of that, there's plugins. My computer's on all the time. I just hook up my guitar to my computer and it's done. It's as easy as that. And when you get an idea, when inspiration strikes, as the saying goes, you don't want to be fidgeting around with connecting things up and wasting time and then firstly losing the idea in the first place. So yeah, there's nothing that beats the convenience of that, for sure. Sometimes though, you want to plug into a nice amp and maybe not even a pedal. You just want to turn up the volume a little bit and just feel the way the guitar reacts with that in that situation. And so sometimes I plug into my amp at home. I have a Sir Badger, which again was gifted to me by my other crazy generous friend Sandeep. Yeah, sometimes I just hook that up and play. But that's more a luxury. When I don't have anything to attend to, and I'm like, okay, let me take this out and hook it up and just play, just feel that stuff going through all of those tubes and just a cable into the amp. It's a great sound. It's a great feeling. And it does feel different. Everything feels different. Everything feels different. Whether you're playing into your pedal board, whether you're playing into a computer, everything feels and responds differently. Can't say one is better than the other. It's all a question of what you're accustomed to. But yeah, everything's different and everything has a purpose and everything has a place. True. Like, in an ideal situation, you wouldn't need an amp modeler because either you would have 20 amps at your backline situation and they'd all be the amps that you want and you'd be able to get all these 20 sounds that you need, right? That doesn't happen. That will never happen. You will never be able to fly with those many amps unless you're, the U2 or something like that. So, which is why my main setup for playing live is pedals. I used to have a pedal board with, individual stomp boxes. I had few of them for drives. I had a couple of them I had an octave pedal. I had one for this weird fuzz effect. And then I had a Line 6 M9 for all the delays and reverbs and things like that. But, as the years go by, flying is becoming harder and harder. And, that was on a big pedal board. Then I shrunk that down to a pedal board that was half the size. That was still too big. Then I shrunk that down to a pedal board that was much smaller. Getting rid of things one at a time. And that was much better. But then when you have a rig that's based on stop boxes, your setup, your sound becomes very reliant on the amp that you get at the gig. And, half the time you can't specify exactly what you want. So you specify the broadest categories that you can.
Correct.
Even then they'll say yes. And then you turn up to the gig and it'll be the one amp that you said, I don't want this amp. That will be the amp at the gig. And then you're screwed because it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel right and you can't make it work. So I got tired of that happening. And so then I decided to switch to a modeling setup. And then I was using the atomic amplifier for quite some time.
Okay.
Which was a great piece of gear. It was, quite compact, and I use it in conjunction with a couple of other pedals. I use a MIDI pedal to control the patch changing and all those things. And then IK Multimedia released this pedal and software called ToneX. And I saw that, and this was at the point when I was looking to upgrade from the Atomic, because I felt that it was lacking a bit. And then this was really timed very well with when I was thinking of upgrading my setup. And so it released and I was like, okay, I'm getting that. And so I had a friend of mine in the US buy it for me and another friend brought it back. And and I've been using that since. And that's a profiling. Am I allowed to get a little more technical here?
Yeah, please.
So it's not a modeling setup, it's a profiling setup. So it doesn't, like a modeling pedal or a modeling piece of hardware will model all the individual components in an amplifier. So it will model the input stage, it'll model the preamp stage, all the tubes, it'll model all the capacitors, it'll model that whole circuit. What a profiler does is it takes the input signal and then it takes the output signal and it kind of figures out how to get this from the other by passing it through actual, like, real amps and real preamps and real mics and things like that. So you end up with something it ends up being quite more accurate to the actual sound than a modeler would be. Again, there's different degrees of variables for this. But yeah, it was, the software was out sometime before that, and it was so well reviewed that I thought, why not just give this. So that's what I'm doing nowadays. I'm using on my live rig, I'm using the ToneX for all my amp sounds, and I'm using a Boss GT1000 core for everything else, like delays, reverbs, modulation, chorus, flanger, phaser, tremolo, anything, because that thing is excellent for effects. You can load. It's got 23 effects blocks that you can load up.
Okay.
And so it's pretty much unlimited. And that's it. That's pretty much it.
So when you set up a specific tone, again, I think it's very subjective. That how much time would you take? But generally, say your setup for composing a band, say Peepal Tree, you're composing one of these songs. How much time would you take to find that one particular tone that kind of goes together with the other elements and the vocals and things like that?
I don't know. That depends. It depends on the kind of song and like who the band is in the first place. If you are playing in like an AC/DC kind of band, there's not too much to it. You dial in a nice crunch sound and you're off to the races. But for People Tree and even for Thermal, there's a lot of textural stuff that happens, and especially in the case of Thermal, there's 2 guitar players, so we have to kind of make sure that nobody's stepping on anybody else's toes, and there's a fly. And at the same time, there has to be some level of clarity throughout the whole thing. We can't make it too washy and dreamy, otherwise everything gets lost. So you do start off getting a rough idea of what you want at home, and then in the jam room you have to kind of fine-tune things. Yeah.
So Tony, tell us about your favorite bands when you're growing up, or the bands that you follow even now.
Oh gosh. I think I'd more easily be able to mention the ones that I liked growing up. So, like I said, when I was growing up, we had great radio, and so it wasn't really genre specific or anything. We liked a lot of the music from all over the place. But when I started playing guitar, actually kind of just before I started playing a little more guitar, I started getting into a little bit more kind of rock and hard rock kind of things, like Guns N' Roses. I was a huge Guns N' Roses fan. I like Metallica, Chili Peppers, Van Halen was a big thing for me. Even before I, was able to appreciate the, their impact on things, and especially Eddie's, influence on guitar. I enjoyed a lot of their music. I was a huge fan of Extreme. Again, even before I could really appreciate what was going on, like guitaristically. Nuno went on to become like one of my biggest influences, and someone who's guitar playing I loved. But even before that, I enjoyed a lot of their music. So it was kind of all over the place. I was a huge, again, even to keep this thread keeps going on. But even before I knew much about music, I was a big fan of guys like Soundgarden. Who else? A number of different guys from that era, mostly Soundgarden, and I'd say Alice in Chains.
Okay.
From that, the kind of grunge period. Pearl Jam also. Everyone. I loved everyone and everything. I can't really say I had favorites at that time, but getting into guitar, I started leaning a certain way. I started getting into guys who are doing like really awesomely impressive at the same time, not just impressive as in playing super fast, but playing very melodic, and at the same time technically challenging, and at the same time playing the right thing for the song. For me, and again, it was all the same. It all happened to be the same guys. It was Nuno, it was Van Halen, it was Paul Gilbert. And then when I started setting out to actually play, it was again leaning more towards the rock side. It was Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, Steve Morse was a huge influence on me. Nuno Betancourt, Slash. I was a big Slash fan. Steve Morse was a big influence at one point because he was kind of one of the first guys that I knew about who was just picking everything. I mean, Paul Gilbert, of course, was a fantastic picker, but he did as much stuff with the left hand as he did with the right. I mean, and as much legato, for want of a better term, stuff as he did with the right hand. But Steve Morse would literally pick everything, and for some reason, I got into my head that was the way to do things. It's kind of silly and childish, but I got into my head that was the only way to do things. So then I started trying to just pick everything, much to the detriment of my left hand. So I saw, everyone else was trying to do a lot of the metal stuff, and, they were sweeping and doing all the tapping and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't want to do all of those things. And I want to do something that sounds a little bit different. So therefore, let me try this picking everything kind of approach. And so Yeah, that kind of stuff. I was a big Dream Theater fan. I'm trying to think of everyone who influenced. Just
Yeah, I can
everyone
understand.
and everything. Yeah, yeah.
Great. Let's talk about your association with Thermal and a Quarter.
Mhm.
Tell us the story behind that.
So I was a fan of the band before I ever joined the band. I used to follow them around to all the places that they would play. I mean, as long as I could afford it. At that time, all the college fests and stuff, if you had a college ID, you could just go and attend.
Yeah.
So I used to go and watch them wherever I could. And at one point, so I used to study in St. Joseph's. And at some point, they opened a music store in Barton Center. And that was, it was just down the road from where Joseph's was. So I used to go there whenever I could and hang out in their shop and annoy them by, playing all the guitars and, stuff like that. And so, I became friends with them. And Bruce and I, sometimes when he had the time and when I was there, I'd force him to like try to jam or something like that. And so we had a couple of those short jams, but it was, it was fun. I became friends with the guys and I used to see them play all the time. And then at some point in 2005, they said that they were looking for someone to kind of fill out the sound. I think because Bruce was doing guitar and vocal duties, and I think they felt the sound would benefit if someone else was there to kind of fill in the spaces. And also, I think it'll also take a lot of the load off of Bruce. So then they asked, and I was like, "Wow, yeah, sure, I totally join your band." And I was quite thrilled about it. And yes, that's when I started playing in 2005. I think it was October, if I'm not mistaken, 2005. And then I continued to play with them for the next 3 years. And then at some point, then I got busy with another band project that came up. And I didn't think I would be able to kind of devote the amount of time that was necessary to both. So I kind of told them I might have to take a step back. And so then I did. And then again in 2015, the Blue Frog was opening here in Bangalore. Right? And so Thermal was doing the inauguration. And they were like, "Hey, we're doing this inauguration. Do you want to come and, play a song with us, like as a guest kind of thing?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. It's been forever since I played with you guys. I'd love to do that." And then I got to practice and they were like, you know a bunch of these songs. Why not play a couple more songs? I was like, "Yeah, sure. I remember these songs. I'll do 2 more." And then by the end of practice, they were like, "Okay, you're doing these 3 songs. You know these 3 songs. Why don't you do these 3?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, cool. I know these songs." And then on the day of the gig, they were like, "You know almost all these songs. Why don't you just like, kind of play the whole set or whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. That sounds cool." So I didn't play the whole set, but I played many more songs than we initially intended. And yeah, I had a great time, of course. And I think the guys also had fun, or so they say. I don't know if they were lying. So based on that one experience, they were like, "Hey man, this was fun. Do you want to, play with us again on a regular basis?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'd love to play with you guys again." And that's how I kind of got back into the fold, so to speak. And and so since 2015, June 2015, I've been playing with you guys. Yeah.
So Tony, let's talk about People Tree now.
Okay.
How did People Tree come together?
How People Tree to come together. So I used to play with. Okay, so before I ever joined, there used to be a band called Bhumi, which was Sujeth from People Tree, Praveen from People Tree, another guitar player called Arvind, and a drummer called Sohan. They were all from KSIT Engineering College, and they were the KSIT Engineering College band. And when I was in college, I met them for the first time when I judged them at a competition. Okay. So I was in college. Technically, I shouldn't be judging, but because I was playing with Mixed Fruit Jam, they kind of knew me as like a semi-pro guitar player, whatever. So they said, "Come and judge our thing." So I judged the festival, and these guys were great. They sounded great, and they won. And so they came to me after that. They were like, "So tell us what we can do to get back." I'm like, "What are you calling me sir for?" We're like the same age. I just came from my class then, Joseph. And but they were, they were really sweet. And I was like, "Man, you sound great. I don't know what to tell you." And then a couple of years later, when I left college, they reached out to me and they were like, "Hey, will you, consider joining our band?" And I was like, "Hey, cool. I love you guys. Think you sound great. I'd really love to join your band." And Sohan, also their drummer, he was, I think he was leaving, or he was going to pursue further studies, or he had started work. I forget the situation now. So they asked if Willie would also join. And Willie was like, "Yeah, sure, let's go for it." And so we joined that band Bhumi, and Bhumi played for many years after that. Some small lineup changes happened. And so that's how we all became friends.
What kind of music was Bhumi playing?
Bhumi was a heavy metal band, but kind of like initially a classic heavy metal band.
Okay.
Kind of along the lines of, Judas Priesty kind of things. But then Willie and I came on board, and we were kind of doing the same thing. But later, I was into so many different things. And so the later songs was songs that I kind of demoed at home. I made all the tracks and everything at home. And so they kind of lean towards a more proggy kind of sound, while not being like overly, 1916 time signatures or something like that. Just slightly, harmony was a little bigger. There were some, there were more movements in songs and things like that. So so by the time we had wound up, I say wound up, we're not technically broken up or anything. It's just that we haven't done gigs in a while. But towards the end of when we were playing, it became slightly more, I don't want to say progressive because everyone thinks of one thing, but I think that's the term that was kind of more progressive metal, but still not really over the line. Yeah.
Okay. And then People Tree?
So that was Bhumi. And so then at some point, Bhumi stopped playing so much. And that was really the only musical outlet that Sujay and Praveen had. And so they stopped playing so much, and I was getting busy with Sandeep doing movies in Bombay. And so Sujay and Praveen, they've known each other for forever, since college and stuff. And so they would meet, and they had this idea to do some of this new music that would kind of exploit Sujay's Hindustani roots. He was a trained Hindustani singer. And so they sat and they wrote some very bare bones sketches for a couple of songs. And they brought them to me and they said, "Hey, will you, do you want to play for this stuff?" And at that time, I was busy with the Bombay stuff and things. So I was a little reluctant. And they said, "Okay, then what about, will you just help us produce these songs?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. That sounds like fun." And so they gave me these sketches that they had for two songs, Chetana and Tangi. And I say sketches because they were really bare bones. Like Chetana was just like one open chord, "Oh, na Chetana, go Aniketana." And just, that chord was kind of just going like that. And Tangi was very similar. There were no chords or harmony or movement or stuff like that. So they gave me these ideas, and I sat and I came up with some chord ideas for that, and then some melody ideas for hooks and stuff like that. And I started working on it. And then at some point, Willie came in. Willie was just had just left Raghu's band at that point. And so he came in and he listened to the stuff and he was like, "Hey, this is cool. Let me, let's do something." And so Willie, he came up with the beat for Tangi. And that's really, that's really the driving force of that song more than anything else. And so those two songs, we did those two songs and we were like, "Hey, this is fun stuff." And then they were like, come on, let's take this on the road. I was like, okay, cool. That sounds like fun. Sounds like something I might like to do. This was 2014. And at that point, I had a bunch of demos left over from another band that I used to be with called Karma 6.
Okay.
And those demos never really went anywhere. They were shelved. And I had all these demos, and I saw them fitting in with the kind of sound we had for this band. And I played them for the guys. The guys had heard them before, and they were like, "Hey, you know, what about those? You know, that kind of sounds totally in line with what we want to do with this band." And I was like, "Yeah, you know, we can take those things and develop them." So a lot of the groundwork was already done that way. And and so, you know, the four of us were like, "Yeah, okay, we've done these demos. Now let's take it on the road." And that's kind of how the band started.
Nice. And you did a lot of shows as well. And now Sujay is in Australia?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's been there for, in April, I think it'll be 2 years on work.
2 years, okay.
Yeah. He's been back a couple of times, but very briefly. So we've kind of been on hiatus for a while. So when he comes back, let's see what happens when he comes back.
Sujay, you're wanted immediately here in Bangalore.
Let's see if people remember who People Trees were. The public
Of
has
course
a very
they do.
No, the public has a very short memory nowadays, especially when it comes to, you know, things like this.
So your association with Sandeep Chota, so you got into movie music as well. Can you tell us something about that?
So the first time I ever met Sandeep was not in relation to any of the work that we did after that. It was when my band Mixed Fruit Jam, we went for Saregama's first ever band competition. Usually it's a solo competition, right? ZTV Saregama. I don't know if it's still ZTV Saregama, but Saregama the show. So they had their first ever band thing in the year 2000. This was May 2000. And so we got to the finals. We made it to the finals along with, you know, some of the killer guys from Bombay. Like there's a band called Bombay Black.
Okay.
There's a band called Homegrown, featuring all the session guys in Bombay. You know, Naresh and Paresh from Kailash's band, Kurt Peters, Tiku, everyone. Just Sheldon, all of the killer session guys there. And we were these kids from Bangalore, and we were so happy to have made it into the finals. And so we, in the finals, it was us versus Naresh and Paresh's band. And obviously they won. They were, you know, they were great. But Sandeep was one of the judges there. So that was the first time I met him. So when I met him many years later, I reminded him of this interaction. I don't think he remembered me because, you know, he would have seen so many bands. But I reminded him of that. So that was technically the first time I met him. But the first time I had like a more meaningful meeting with him was when my dear friend Alvin Fernandez, a fantastic guitar player.
Yeah, he's crazy.
He was a close friend of Sandeep's for a long time. And Sandeep had entrusted him with putting a band together that would be on the Columbia Records label, because Sandeep was the head of Columbia Records at that time.
Okay.
So he said, you know, Alvin, put this band together. I want to do some music with you guys, and I need you to find me people who are capable and dependable. So Alvin spoke to me. He spoke to Dilu. He spoke to Mark Lazaro and a couple of other people, Prakash, and our dear friend Karan Joseph also. So we put this band together, and Sandeep came down, and we all met. You know, we had a great time, great connection over so much music. Sandeep is like an encyclopedia of music, especially in the jazz and the jazz fusion spaces. So, you know, we got off to a very good start that way. And we became friends, all of us. We became good friends very quickly. And then Sandeep, you know, Sandeep was doing background scores for movies and music for movies for the longest time. And at some point, I think I had expressed some interest. And so he would say, okay, I'm doing this movie. I need some guitar bits for this. Just record something and send it to me when I was here in Bangalore. So then I'd record some stuff and send it to him. And then he'd use it. And that's how I started slowly getting in. Because it was really, I thoroughly enjoy a good background score. And I enjoyed the whole process of, sitting down and recording music and doing it for visuals and all of those things. So then at some point he said, hey, why don't you come and, do some stuff for me for the movies? I was like, yeah, sure, I'd love to. And then, but then it was more, it was less guitar oriented and it was more, full background score, work on a cue for this scene and et cetera, et cetera. And that was a great learning for me. That was a huge learning for me. And it kind of informed the way I approach things now so much. I learned so much from him in terms of sound design, composition, how to do things for a scene, all those kind of things that I'd never done before. So yeah, it was fun. It was, I think from 2008. That's when I did my first bit of work with him. And till 2015, I think he moved back here to Bangalore. He wanted to kind of develop his music and his label more. So he wanted to spend more time on that.
Music was that Nama Music?
Nama Music. And so that's why he moved back to Bangalore. And he's just been like, he's a one-man music factory. Like since 2020, since the pandemic hit, I think he's put out something like 42 or 43 albums. And that's,
wow.
Most people don't do that much in their lives.
Yeah.
And so he's a thorough professional, along with our dear friend Vikram, who mixes most of the stuff. Both of them are like a tag team. So so I learned a lot in that whole in the whole background score kind of phase when I was working with Sandeep. And I got to hang out with a bunch of cool people. All of the directors and producers that would come over, some of the actors, singers, everyone. I got to meet a lot of like really cool people at that time. Yeah.
So you were part of the project called Relax Man. So what was the brief? It's an instrumental album, right? Yeah. So what was the brief given to you?
So it wasn't a brief in the sense that it was a kind of collaborative project between Sandeep and me. And Sandeep called one day and he was like, hey, I want to do this this thing. I had in mind this kind of funky, kind of loungy stuff without being, just meant this was when the pandemic happened, right? So his idea was, let's do something that's fun to listen to, that doesn't get overly, we're not trying to show off our chops. We're not trying to show off, our ability to compose or crazy harmony or anything like that. We want something that's fun, nice to listen to, still rich musically, but kind of centered more on just a peaceful listening experience. So I was like, yeah, sure, it sounds like fun. Anytime I get to play guitar, it's fun. So I said, yeah, I'm in. What do we have to do? So he said, okay, I have these ideas. I'll develop these a little more and I'll send them to you. You come up with the guitar hooks and the guitar parts and layers and stuff like that. And that's it. We'll see how that goes. So then he sent the first one. And the first one also, I think I also played bass. Because again, there wasn't anything that was going to be too crazy. I knew I wasn't going to have to shred like OC or something like that. It it's very, very straightforward and very, it just fits the song. At least I hope it fits the song. I didn't want to overdo things, basically. That was the, so in terms of brief, that was what we had in mind. Don't overdo anything. Like, don't overthink anything. Just, just do the simple thing, do what comes naturally. and let's do that. So we did it song by song. Sandeep would often make fun of me because I take so long, to a lot of the time just to come up with the idea, because he'd send me these things with these beautiful chords and these beautiful textures, and I'm like, damn, how do I make this sound, like, how do I make my guitar part fit in this thing without messing it up, So it would take some time, but we put out the first one, and that was great. We both really enjoyed the whole process. And then we did the second one, and then in the second one we got like some serious people on board, like actual bass players, like Anthony Crawford, Lucas Matos, Seb Reed, guys from all over the place. That was the US, Brazil, the UK, and we got some other instrumentalists on board also. So it was a little bit more of an expansive project, but with the same overall sound in mind. The brief was kind of the same. So that was great fun. That was super fun also. And that was the Relax Man projects. And the third volume was Relax Men, where it was more collaborative in the sense that Sandeep wrote all these pieces and he sent them out to different guitar players. I was one of them. Alwyn was one of them, and there were some other killer guitar players also on that album.
Crazy. When you say you're coming up with a guitar part and there's a writer's block, say composer's block, how do you overcome that? If there's something like that,
I just step away. Like I can't. I often notice that when I sit and try and force something out, it often sounds too contrived. And that's fine for a lot of work that is, very fast. You need to get things done, tight deadlines, like commercial work and stuff like that. It's fine because you're trying to fit a sound. The sound is not front and center. It's kind of in the background, and you want to fit. Your sound has to be like, I don't want to say background, but it takes a back seat to whatever the action is that's happening on there. So in those cases, it's fine. But here, the melody and how the melody fits with the harmony were the focal point of the whole music. And so you don't want to do something just like, okay, this works, next, You want to give it the time it deserves and come up with something that does justice to what you're trying to do, especially because it's music of your own and music for the sake of music. It's not music for a commercial. It's not music for a background. That's not fair. Background scores also can be very creative, but also it's, they're reliant on the visuals and stuff like that. But it's, this is music that you are doing, that you want to represent yourself and the people you're doing it with. So I don't know how Sandeep does it. He has idea after idea. I think it's because he listens to so much and has listened to so much music. So he just has all these ideas.
That's awesome. Now, you've been singing for a long time. I know that. You would put out covers and stuff like that. Why did it take you so long to come up with the collaboration, with O.C. Kumango that you did? So why did it take so long?
I don't know. Nobody has ever asked me to sing though on their music. I enjoy it. I don't consider myself, especially you look at some of the youngsters nowadays who are singing. They're fantastic. They have all the technique in place and they've been training for so long, and they sound great. So I don't consider myself a singer in that regard. I enjoy it. I really enjoy it. I feel like, I connect with the music in a way that's very personal to me. Of course, that depends on what music we're talking about. I can't sing Barbie Girl convincingly. So I do feel a sense of authenticity there. I don't feel like I'm pretending or anything, unless it's Barbie Girl. But I never consider myself a singer that way. I put out a lot of stuff on Instagram. I've done some videos with my dear friend Sumesh from Spaceport Entertainment. And Willie, we did like an Audio Slave cover. We've done, all sorts of things. But that's really just my own passion project and just an indulgence. But funny is because of all of those things that OC even knew that I kind of sang at all. And so he was like, "Hey man, will you do?" I think he told you that I watched the episode with him, and I think he told you the story, right? So he wanted to sing it. He wanted to sing the song himself, and but at the end of it, I don't think he felt he was the right fit for the vibe of the song. And he played it for me, and I thought he sounded nice. Okay. I thought he he fit because he has a delivery that's very unique also. But he was like, "No, man, I'm not convinced with this. I want you to do it." I'm like, I don't even know if I can do it. Like I can do one thing one way. I can't. Just as an aside, I'd been in the studio with Sandeep when Sonu Nigam came to record a couple of songs, and he's like, it's unbelievable the level of professionalism at that level. Singers like him, he comes in and he can nail it all the way through because he knows what the emotional delivery should be. He knows what the inflection should be. Sandeep, of course, gives some kind of direction. He says, maybe do this, maybe do that. But apart from that, he just nails it, and it's pitch perfect. And so that was the standard I had in my head. I was like, there's no way I can live up to that. I can do one thing one way. If somebody says, try this, I'm like, I don't know how, But luckily for the song, I think it worked.
Yeah, it worked really well.
And
it did.
Yeah, it was fun. I had a great time doing it. And, we tried a couple of, some of the variation things that I came up with. And I was comfortable doing that because I kind of know OC's taste in music very well because we're almost of the same vintage. He's a little bit older than me. But, we grew up on a lot of the same music. And so I kind of knew what he would like when I was trying stuff like variations and things like that. And so all of that worked out really well. It was fun. I had a great time. And I'm quite happy with the end result also.
Yeah, it sounds very good.
And yeah, thanks. So that was why it's the first time anyone really asked. So yeah.
So, do you have your own compositions? I mean, maybe an instrumental or even something that you've written down as a song?
So technically, a lot of, like I said, a lot of the beds of the people, a lot of the instrumental stuff of the People Tree stuff was stuff that I had, demos that I had done.
Okay.
A lot of the, the Relax Man stuff was co-composed. I have, I've had stuff over the years, but then, you listen to it a year later and you're like, I don't like it, delete. So there's been a lot of that stuff. But now I think I've reached the point where I'm not deleting stuff so much.
Yeah.
So there are ideas for things, and I would like to get to that at some point. Because
so can we listen to a new single from you pretty soon?
No, not anytime soon. I think I'm doing a couple more things with OC.
Okay.
But yeah, no.
I'm waiting for his album so badly. Yeah, that's great. Tony, this question is for the younger musicians. Okay. How do you set your time for practice? Now that you are so busy with different projects and things like that, do you still find time to, practice the way you used to, or?
The way I used to, no, because the way I used to back in the day is if nobody disturbed me, I would just go on and on and on and on and on. There are times when nobody was at home and practice for the whole day, like 10 hours. And you can't do that anymore, right? You have so many responsibilities, so many things to do. But I do play every day as far as possible. Sometimes, it's a travel day or something and you can't. But I do sit. I'm guilty of not having a very well planned out practice regimen, or a practice regimen that is focused on growth. I'm guilty of that, very guilty for a long time. But I try and play and at least have some connection with the instrument, and I do some amount of like just free association. I'm not working towards any particular purpose. Maybe sometimes I put on a backing track. YouTube is filled with great backing tracks.
Yes.
So I'll put something on and I'll jam along with it, or I'll just play unaccompanied. Sometimes I'll just play guitar by itself, and so I do spend some time with that every day. What's my advice to kids is do as much 10-hour days as you can now. No, don't do 10-hour days, because then when you get carpal tunnel syndrome, you'll come and blame me. So don't do 10-hour days. But do as much as you can, as long as you can, while you're still young and you don't have to pay bills and stuff. Because all of that stays with you and it goes a long way. And it'll make sure that later in life, when you don't always get to do the 8-hour, 10-hour days, that your fundamentals have already been taken care of. So I'd say spend as much time as you can practicing.
Awesome. Any future projects that you can talk about?
Future projects. Oh, I don't know if I can mention who, but there's a friend of mine who writes some like beautiful music. I really enjoy his songs. Right now, they're pretty much just acoustic guitar. I think they're going to stay mostly in the acoustic realm. And so I'm going to be working with him to kind of flesh out these songs a little bit and record them a little bit.
Okay.
And so that's, again, there's no timeline for this stuff, but I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, awesome. All right. So thank you so much, Tony, for being with us here and sharing your journey.
Thanks.
It's amazing. And we would want to call you again.
Thanks so much. After blabbering as much as I did, I felt like you wouldn't want to call me.
No, I will, because here's what we're going to do. We want you to work on another single and release it for us.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, something soon.
Speak to my boss, OC.
Cool. Anyways, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Right. And that was the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video. So hit the like button, share, subscribe, and press the bell icon. I will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.